Islam, Shalom, Hola, Aloha, Bonjour, Osio, Assalamu Alaikum, Konnichiwa, Jumbo. This your brother, Zach Bay, Indigenous American boy, coming to you live in full effect. Like, share, subscribe to my channel, hit the notification bell down below so you can be notified whenever I'm dropping some new content. Leave a comment, interact with me. I really do appreciate your viewership. Let's jump into another one. Back at it again, Black's Law Dictionary, 4th edition. Have some definitions for your dome piece. Let's get ready. And special thanks to like the 6 to 7 subs who are always watching my content all the way through. I really do appreciate that watch time. All right, back at it. All right, so I found some interesting definitions I wanted to go over with you all, share with you, get more of an understanding, overstanding exactly what I mean, when I bring up some of these definitions, so you get like the actual, you get the actual legalese behind it. All right, so the first one I want to show, I've done this before, but we're going to talk about it again. Fiat. All right, it says Latin, let it be done. All right, in English practice, a short order or warrant of a judge or magistrate directing some act to be done, an authority issuing from some competent source for the doing of some legal act. All right, fiat. Now, most people think of fiat as currency. All right, and then down here to see the second one, it says one of the proceedings in the English bankrupt practice being a power signed by the Lord or Chancellor addressing the court of bankruptcy, authorizing the petition of the creditor, to proceed his complaint before it. All right, let's continue here. More so talking about fiat as, currency or unlawful currency. Let's check it out. Fictitious name. All right, so if we call in fiat dollars, but we actually know that dollars means like gold and silver of actual value, but we're still using fiat bills of exchange, and we're pretty much calling it a fictitious name, which can count for a lot of different things. All right, it says a counterfeit. All right, feigned or pretended name taken by a person. All right, remember, person can be artificial person, which can be a corporation, some kind of illegal entity, or a natural person, which is flesh and blood and living. All right, differing in some essential particular from his true name. All right, and it was a true name consisting of a Christian name. All right, patriarchal name. It can also be, an Islamic family name, surnames, titles of nobility can also fall underneath that. Not fictitious names, but as in a true name. All right. Continue here. Pause the video if you like to, read these at your own leisure, and also check out some of these other definitions that you may be able to see. All right, fictitious payee, negotiable instrument. All right, so the first thing it says, a fictitious payee. All right, if you're paying someone, we already know fictitious is fake, something that's not real, false representation. All right, it says negotiable instrument is drawn to a fictitious payee whenever the payee named in it has no right to it, and its maker does not intend that such payee shall take anything by it, whether name of payee used by maker is that of living person or dead, or one who never existed, is immaterial. You know what I'm saying? Fictitious payee, fictitious name, fictitious person, that's why I'm going over these. Again, a person that's living or dead or never existed. Fictitious, fam. I'm telling you, these are the wordplay that they use when they get us in these so-called courts of law. Fictitious person, a person who, though named as payee in a check, has no right to it or its proceeds because the drawer of it is as so intended. Okay, the drawer of it so intended. The person who drew up the check, the negotiable instrument, we said the drawer, or you could even say author, the author of this fictitious instrument, bill, exchange, can put it in the name of a fictitious person with no intent for it to ever go to that fictitious name, because there's somebody behind the scenes who's really pulling the strings, who's using the administrative process and just benefiting and profiting off of this fictitious person, this fictitious name. Where in these courts of law, these all capital letters names, someone is benefiting off that. There's back deals going on. Bonds are being exchanged. All right, like fictitious plaintiff, a person appearing in a writ or record as a plaintiff in a suit, but who in reality does not exist. All right, think about that. Who in reality does not exist. Grand Sheikh Taj Tariq Bey always said, be careful of when you interact with an entity calling themselves the state of this, the state of that, the state of Maryland, the state of Virginia, the state of Wyoming. The state of is usually fictitious. It's usually always attached to a fictitious entity, something that's not real. So it says the people versus Joe Smo. The people could be a fictitious plaintiff. The people could be the state of, which is a fictitious plaintiff, something that never existed, but it appears in a writ or a suit, a record, as the plaintiff, and they're making you answer to someone who isn't even real. They say accusers, they say in the court of law, the defendant or the accused has the right to face their accuser. All right, that means a person, a living person, has to be there to say, hey, this person damaged me, this person wronged me, this person injured me in some way, shape, or form. Otherwise, you're dealing with a fictitious plaintiff, a fictitious person, an entity, the state of a fictitious person. And then they're using a proxy, they're using an agent as a prosecutor to speak for this fictitious person, this fictitious plaintiff, this fictitious payee. That's exactly what they're using when these prosecutors are speaking for the state of Wyoming, the state of California. The state of cannot speak for themselves because they're not a living person, they're not a living entity. I hope you're getting what I'm putting down here. A lot of this stuff might go over a lot of heads, but it's right here in black and white. Let's continue. Fiduciary. All right, fiduciary. Think about like the feudal system, the feudal era. I think of like feudal Japan. How I watched so many samurai, so many shogun films and flicks. Right, feudal era. Right. The term is derived from the Roman law and means, as a noun, a person holding the character of a trustee, or the character that, it says, the character analogies that of a trustee and respect to the trust and confidence involved in it. All right, so the trust, a trustee, and a trust is a documentation. It says under scrupulous good faith, candor, which it requires. All right, so it's pretty much a trustee relationship. person holding the character of a trustee, or the analogies of a trustee in respect to a trust and confidence involved in it. Good faith. All right. It says a person having duty created by his undertaking to act primarily for the other's benefit. The other's benefit will be the beneficiary. That's who you're acting in benefit for, the beneficiary. It says to act primarily in the benefit of others in the matters connected with such undertakings. All right. That means like it could be settling an estate. It could be overseeing an estate, properties, all these things. But that's the fiduciary. All right. All of us can have this capacity. And fiduciary capacity. One is said to act in a fiduciary capacity or to receive money or contract a debt in a fiduciary capacity when the business which he transacts or the money or property which he handles is not his own. All right. When you're acting as agent, you're acting as executor, you're acting as power of attorney over someone else's property or estate, or as real property, then you're acting in a fiduciary capacity. I hope you get that. All right. In the benefit of another person who he stands in relation, implying necessitating great confidence and trust on one part and a high degree of good faith. All right, that means you're acting in the best interest always. You're not doing anything underhanded. You're not trying to snake deal anybody, put anybody in some kind of trick bag, as they say. You're acting in a high degree of good faith on the other person, for the other person's benefit. All right, a beneficiary of some sort. The term is not restricted to technical or express trust, but includes also such offices or relations to those of an attorney. Like I told you, look, an attorney at law, a guardian. All right, guardian ad litem for children who are underage, minors, executor of an estate, or a broker. All right, you know about brokers when it comes to stocks and bonds. A director of a corporation. All right, directors of a corporation have a fiduciary capacity and responsibility to the shareholders. All right, and the public officer. All right, all public officers have an oath that they take to withhold their office for the people, for the good of someone who's other than them. These are all fiduciary capacities, fam. Let's check it out. Let's continue to move along here. Fiduciary relationships. All right, we went over a few of these. All right, a few of these titles. All right, attorney, fiduciary relationship, guardian, executor, broker, director. These are all different fiduciary relationships and express, including, but both technical fiduciary relationships and those informal relationships which exist whenever one man trusts. Look, whenever one man trusts and relies upon another, that's when a fiduciary relationship is created. When you are not handling your own affairs personally, and you rely on the trait, you rely on the good faith, the trust, and the relationship of another. You rely on an attorney at law. You rely on a guardian. You rely on an executor. You rely on a broker, a director. If you rely on them, they're in a fiduciary relationship with you. All right. And it says whenever you rely on the trust on another, upon another, that's exactly what it is. Most of the time, we're supposed to be handling our affairs on our own, fam. All of our affairs, business, private, public. We're supposed to be handling all these affairs on our own without being under the stewardship, under the fiduciary relationship of another in a wardship, status, a ward of the state, or a minor status, being a minor, being one who is not of sound mind, who's not of age. All right. I hope you're getting what I'm putting down. Let's continue. Fine. We got verb and noun. To impose a pecuniary punishment. All right. some kind of monetary punishment, to sentence a person convicted of an offense to pay a penalty in monies, gold or silver. All right. Also, they can be settled in negotiable instruments. Fine. Now, a sum of money paid at the end to make an end of a transaction. All right. Whenever you have to pay a fine at the end of your court date, you just went through a transaction, man. You just went through a transaction, fam. These people have monetized you in some way, shape, or form and are profiting off of your labors. They're profiting off of your appearance. They're profiting off of your identity. They're profiting off of the bond that is on the table behind the scenes in a transaction, in a suit, all right, in a prosecution, mulct, and penalty. These are fines. They can compel you with fines if you are in these relationships, if you're not at your proper capacity. Let's continue here. When someone like us, a Moor in America, an indigenous American, all right, first, we should be first in line. We should be first class status, first class title. This is the stuff that MLK was talking about. Dr. Martin Luther King, when he was talking about we're a third class citizenship, we're exiled in our own land. This is exactly what he was talking about. We should have this first class citizenship. We should be considered on paper as white. White as in a legal status means first class, of the most superior or excellent grade or kind, belonging to the head or chief class, or numerically president of several classes, which is general subject is divided. All right, pretty much the head, the top, the most superior. When you say this is first class, a first grade, all right, the most superior. This is what MLK was talking about. This should have been our status. This should be the status of the so-called American Negro, the so-called American Indian, the so-called African American. First class status, fam. This is what MLK was talking about. Look, first class title, a marketable title shown by a clear record, or at least not depending on presumptions of guilt that must be overcome, or fact that are uncertain. See, these are the presumptions that they have us under when they have us as Negro, Black, colored people on paperwork. We're not considered as first class. We're considered or having to depend upon presumptions that are already made against our name, against our status, that are uncertain. All right, fam. This is your brother Zach Bay, Indigenous American Moor, coming to you live in full effect. Like, share, subscribe to my channel. Hopefully you enjoyed these definitions in this dictionary. Once again, Black's Law 4th edition. Like, share, subscribe. Peace.